Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Chilltown Hoops. I'm your host, Jermaine. The youngsters call me OG. My friends call me J-Dub. Let's get to it. I talk a lot about top 10 all-time greats, and I defend the guys that I have in my top 10 all-time, and the reason why is because of my criteria, right? So when you're talking about a guy being an all-time great, there has to be standards for that. And in order for you to be able to defend that, you have to have those standards. So when I talk about all-time greats, I start with, is your game timeless? That means that can you dominate, or not necessarily dominate, but can your game translate at any point? If we dropped you in this era, can you still do what you were able to do? I'm having a difficult time believing that Bill Russell couldn't do what he was doing back then today, considering the transition player that he was, considering the rim protector that he was, considering how wide open the game is today, and considering the lack of rebounding that there is today. Great rebounders. I mean, I heard Ben Wallace talk about if he played in today's game, he would average 50 rebounds. That was a little bit embellished. That was a little bit of an embellishment, but I believe him when he said, I believe that he could be a 15 to 18 rebound a game guy in today's game. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. I believe Dennis Rodman could be a 15 to 19 rebound a game guy in today's game, especially considering when they played and the guys that they played against. So the lack of big guys who play underneath the basket like that, who don't do the dirty work like that, tells me that there's no reason why Bill Russell wouldn't dominate on the backboard. Add that to the fact that how wide open the game is, and how fast the game is, and the athlete that Bill Russell was, and his ability to get out and transition, and playing with a distributor who could get him the basketball in transition where he can finish. I don't see why. Now, would Bill Russell be a 24, 25 rebound a game guy? I'm not going to go that far, but I'm definitely not going as low as 15. I think that he could be a 17, 18 rebound a game guy, no problem. No, especially if that was primarily what he did and running in transition, there's no reason why he couldn't do that. So I think his game translates. So that's what I mean when I talk about a guy's game being timeless. Also, his ability to defend and his ability to rim protect. A lot of people talk about how the game is pushed back further. You got a lot of big guys having to guard on the perimeter. Well, just so you know, Bill Russell was an Olympic athlete. He was an elite athlete. So there's no reason for me to believe that he couldn't defend on the perimeter at 6'9", 6'10". No reason for me to believe that. I think that his game would translate into today's game. No doubt about that. So then, number 2, did you dominate? Well, what do you mean, did you dominate? Well, Karl Malone averaged 28 and 11 for over a decade. That's almost 30 and 10 for over a decade. If we got a guy running around in the NBA today that's 30 and 10, how are we talking about him? I think that's Luka. Luka's like 30 and 8 or 30 and 9. So imagine Luka doing that for a decade. That's dominating. And if we had somebody doing that, we would have to talk about him. We would have to talk about somebody like that amongst the all-time greats because you dominated during your era. I was awesome. There wasn't too many guys who could deal with me. There wasn't too many. Well, that moves me into number 3 because I care about production. I care about what you did, and I care about how you did it, and I care about when you did it. So that moves into number 3, which is you kicking ass like you kicking ass. Well, did you win? That's very important because you can't just dominate and you didn't win, right? So if you're doing all those things and you're winning, well, now we're having a completely different conversation about you. Because if you're winning and you are the guy in the process of doing that, then you have to be listed in the all-time great conversation. Jordan, not only was Jordan dominant, not only does Jordan's game translate, right? But he also won, and he won in dramatic fashion, and he won in dominant fashion as well. That's why we talk about him in the fashion that we talk about him. Same reason with James. Same thing with Jabbar. Same thing with Bill Russell. Same thing with Chamberlain. That's how we talk about these guys because winning is the separator, right? And then number 4, when you talk about a guy dominating, right? When you talk about a guy's game translating, number 4 means to me, how impactful is your game? how much does your game move the game forward? How much does your game translate to other people where they look at your game like, man, that's what it takes. That's what it's going to take to be successful, right? That's what people, or that's in order for me to be awesome, that's what it's going to take. And your game moves the game forward. So Chamberlain, his game moved the game forward where they had to change the rules for him, right? Jordan moved the game forward because him being the prototype two guard now. So before Jay shows up, the two guard is 6'3", right? 6'3", 6'4". Jay shows up, this dude is 6'6", and he jumps this high. Well, wait a minute. Now that's what the two guard looks like, as opposed to what he looked like before. So James, for an example, when you talk about James as a small forward, well, the small forward was a slasher, right? He was a bucket getter in transition. But now you got James as not just the point forward and the distributor, but I'm also a defender, right? I'm also the guy you go to in the clutch, right? I'm also the guy who's playing longer, making big shots, and doing it for a long period of time. So when you got guys doing it like that, now we're talking about a guy whose game is transcendent, right? We're talking about a guy whose game impacts everybody, where they go, damn, can I do that? And that's what the standard is, right? And since we're on the subject of standard, that's why I move into number 5, which is, how socially impactful were you? Like, how do people feel about you? Because as good as you were on the floor, right? As good as you were on the floor, what type of dude were you? How do people view you? What do people think about you? And when you put all of those things together, you can come up with a top 10 that fits the narrative. When you have a criteria, you can come up with a top 10 that fits your criteria. And with that criteria, my top 10, James, Jordan, Jabbar, Chamberlain, Russell, Magic, Bird, Duncan, Olajuwon, Diesel. Those are my top 10 guys, right? Because all 10 of those guys fit my criteria to a T. To an absolute T. Now, when I think about being an all-time great, that moves me into the logic of Joker. Because Joker, the only reason why we're having a conversation today about Joker being the league MVP is because he won it last year. That's the only reason why we're having a conversation about it now. That's it. If he didn't win it last year, as good as Jason Tatum is, and I am now a part of the Jason Tatum allegiance, I'm pledging my allegiance to him, no doubt about that. But as good as Jason Tatum is playing, I still think that Giannis is the best player in the game. But the guy who is the most valuable to his team's success today is Joker. He's essentially doing the same thing this season as he did last year. The same thing he did last season when he won the league MVP, when his team wasn't very good. He's doing the same thing this year, and his team is even better, and that's primarily because of him. He leads the league in PER. He leads the league in offensive win share. He leads the league in overall win share. He leads the league in plus minus. He leads the league in value. He leads the league in all of those things, the same as he did last year. Only except this year, Denver is at the top of the Western Conference. His rebounding total is down, but his assist total is up, which would explain why Aaron Gordon has been so much better. Which would explain why Jamal Murray has been so much better this season. MPJ has been so much better. Bones has been so much better. Which would explain why, and the reason why these guys have been so much better is because they play primarily off Joker. Joker's ability to navigate through the offense, not just in the half court, but in transition as well. And his ability to speed the game up on the backboard, because he's also their primary rim protector. He's also their best interior defender. That's Joker. So his value on that unit, I don't think it's matched by anybody else. That doesn't mean that I think he's the best player in the game, because I still think it's Giannis. I still feel like that. But in terms of an overall value, and if you take this dude and you bring his success into what the team is doing, again, guys, essentially what he's doing this season, he did the same thing last year. And his team, which he now has, is so much better this season, and that's primarily due to him. I've always felt like you can't sell me a guy who's on an 8th or 9th place team, or even a 7th or 6th place team, who's more valuable than a guy who's on a 2nd or 3rd place team. You can't sell me that. But with Joke, because the league MVP, and I'm sorry if I'm, the league MVP has always been about winning. Always been about winning. And it always will be about winning. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some exceptions. Joker was an exception last year, right? Russ was an exception in the 16-17 season. But up until then, all of these other guys have been on winning teams, like I said, in the last 40 years. In the last 40 years, with the exception of Joker and Russ, every league MVP, his team hosted a playoff series. Every one of them. Because that's what the league MVP is about. That is very much part of the criteria. Now, there are parts of the criteria that have changed, but for the most part, it's been about winning. With the exception of those two guys, it's been that. And I think we're getting back to that. So this season, you're not going to see a guy whose team is in 5th place. You're not going to see a guy whose team is in 6th place. No, because the guys whose teams are at the top of the league, they're playing the best. So I think if the season ended today, I think it's Joker going away. There are some guys who will get consideration, like Jason Tatum, no doubt about that. Ja Morant also, Luka, but for the most part, and Giannis, because I had Giannis before the season started. But for the most part, I think Joker is the league MVP, and I think he wins it going away this season. So we're in the dog days of the season, guys, and this is when it's getting really good. This is when we really have to pay more attention to what's going on. So I'll do my best to keep you posted, and I'll see you soon. But until then, take it light, but take it.